Subcommittee are allowed to participate in today's hearing and will be recognized after all subcommittee members have had the opportunity to ask questions. The Strategic Forces Subcommittee meets today to receive testimony on the policies and programs related to the national security space activities. Good afternoon to our witnesses, and thank you for joining us today. Before us, we have, and completing the committee hat trick, is Ms. Andrea Yaffe, 3 weeks in a row, thank you, the Acting Assistant Secretary of Defense for Space Policy within the Office of the Secretary of Defense. We have Dr. Chris Scalise, the Director of the National Reconnaissance Office, Vice Admiral Frank Whitworth, the Director of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, and Major General Stephen Purdy, the Acting Assistant Director of the Air Force Space Acquisition Integration. We appreciate your time today and your service. Dr. Scalise, I understand this will be your last hearing with us. We appreciate your service and the good work you've done at the NRO. Unfortunately, we still do not have programmatic details for the President's budget request for fiscal year 2026, but the top line number did give us some hints. The space systems and people provided by the organizations you all represent are foundational to the security of our nation and the joint force. This is why it is so important that we have the ability to fight and win in space. It is not enough to simply provide important information like missile warning, PNT, and nuclear command and control in all stages of the conflict. Now we must be able to hold at risk the CCP kill web that enables space-based targeting and tracking of our terrestrial forces and extends the range and accuracy of their weapons. Our ability to break this kill web will determine the success or failure of the joint force and its objectives in the Indo-Pacific. That requires having the right systems in relevant timeline. I want to associate myself with Chairman Rogers and Ranking Member Smith, who have been calling attention to it, not only how we buy things and the broken acquisition processes, but also the people doing the acquiring. Specifically regarding the Space Force, they have raised concerns with how these acquisition professionals are developed, trained, and given opportunities to advance in their careers. As we work to make sure we are developing a force that can fight and win in space, we must also make sure that the platforms they will need to break those kill webs are delivered on time and on budget. That starts with having highly trained acquisition professionals. Every Guardian supports the warfighting mission. This means that time spent at Space Systems Command figuring out how to bring more non-traditional companies into the mix is just as important as time spent at Delta IX conducting orbital warfare. This subcommittee is proudly where Space Force got its start. We will, in a bipartisan way, continue to push to make sure that it stays the course and achieves that original vision of improving space acquisitions. I look forward to hearing updates today from our witnesses on some of your programs and how you are working to speed up that acquisition timeline so that we can deliver needed systems to the force. Major General Purdy, I'm glad to see that you aren't standing still despite serving in an acting capacity. Your recent announcement of the new acquisition plan for the follow-on to the Geosynchronous Space Situational Awareness Program, or GSAP, that calls for more commercially developed technology and diversity to the supplier base is just the type of innovation we need. Dr. Scalise, the NRO's rapid deployment of its proliferated constellation of more than 150 satellites over the past 2 years has not only given you the largest government constellation, but has been a great example of how we can move quickly. Vice Admiral Whitworth, the recent awarding of task orders for commercial imagery analysis on your Luno A program and the funding of the Luno B program focused on commercial AI are exactly the kind of commercial integration we need to stay ahead of our adversaries. Finally, Ms. Yaffe, all these efforts are underpinned by our policies in space. How your office is planning for the increased testing, training, and changing operational norms to support these new systems and warfighting doctrine will be incredibly important. With that, I now recognize my good friend and ranking member, Mr. Moulton, for his opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Chairman Desjardins, and welcome to our panel of witnesses. Dr. Scalise, I understand this will be your last hearing in front of this subcommittee. Thank you for your dedicated service to our nation and your steadfast commitment to transforming the NRO into an organization prepared to face the threats we face in space today and into the future. Our national security space architecture is undergoing a significant transformation, and it must transform because life as we know it relies on satellites. The Global Positioning System, developed, launched, and operated by the Space Force, is the most obvious. Most people don't realize all the things that depend on GPS. For example, it provides the timing information that makes our entire financial system function. Without it, you wouldn't be able to use your credit card, withdraw money from a bank account, and Wall Street would cease all trading. It's also no secret that almost every weapon system in our inventory depends on space, whether for communications, navigations, or intelligence. Over the past 30 years of U.S. operations in the Middle East, Russia and China have watched our reliance on space and have developed, deployed, and demonstrated capabilities to hold our satellites and therefore our way of war at risk. The People's Republic of China has now launched over 1,000 satellites into orbit, 70% of those in the last 5 years. And they include systems that could be used as weapons in space. And as we all know now, Russia is developing a space-based nuclear weapon. If launched, it would be in direct violation of the Outer Space Treaty, and if detonated, it would degrade or destroy nearly every satellite in its path. As I've noted before, that includes any space-based interceptor constellation that might be part of the President's Golden Dome. One push of a button could destroy trillions of dollars of investment and make low Earth orbit unusable for years. Obviously, any nation willing to launch a massive nuclear attack on us would not hesitate to quickly take out our defenses. Understanding how urgent this race for space superiority has become, the last administration continued diversifying DoD space systems by leveraging a massive U.S. advantage, our rapidly expanding commercial space industry. Across the board, there are companies outpacing DoD innovation in satellite communications, remote sensing, space domain awareness, and defending our satellites on orbit. Yet despite consistent pressure from this subcommittee, the culture shift to maximize the benefit of commercial space continues to meet considerable resistance. I'm especially concerned about the rumor that the National Reconnaissance Office, at the direction of OMB, has slashed commercial imagery funding lines in the FY26 budget. More broadly, DoD's flat top line for FY26 undoubtedly means that the Space Force will be taking a cut. I was willing to criticize the previous administration for failing to invest more in space, and I will criticize this one for the same failure. This mistake is especially stark when considering the billions thrown after Golden Dome with no plan or forethought. I know the White House is putting all their hopes and dreams into the, quote, one beautiful bill for reconciliation, but as my Republican colleagues know, this bill faces serious hurdles, and there is immense risk in assuming that money will be there. Cuts to the Space Force would be catastrophic. I'm also seriously concerned about the health of the workforce carrying out these vital missions. Civilians perform critical roles in areas like contracting and engineering, and the Space Force has been hit disproportionately hard by this administration's goal to demonize federal employees. As I said before, America has a robust commercial space sector. Most of these people could work fewer hours for a lot more money at these companies, but they work for DoD because they care about the mission. Space Force has already lost over 14% of its civilian acquisition workforce at Space Systems Command, thanks to Elon Musk. And the most talented people with the most other options generally make up the voluntary departures under DOGE. I am sure Mr. Musk has no problem with having more talented people to hire while having lower oversight of his SpaceX contracts, but this careless decimation of the Space Force civilian workforce is unacceptable, and we must stop the bleed. These losses are compounded by concerns regarding the future for early career acquisition guardians. As the Space Force builds out its new officer pipelines, I'm concerned that prioritizing operations over acquisition, just as the chairman mentioned, will negatively impact the department's ability to smartly and flexibly acquire the space capabilities we need and lower the expertise within the service to do so. If Guardians continue to hear from their leadership that operations is the only way to contribute to the Space Force, they have options to go work for any number of space companies who heavily recruit them today. I recall that the committee stood up the service part in part because of a desire to change the historically poor track record of space acquisitions. Space is a fascinating and infinite domain. Until recently, we only really experienced through the lens of science fiction. But in reality, space has been a part of our daily lives since the dawn of the space race. Our warfighters everywhere, on the ground, under the sea, in the air, depend on space. I look forward to today's discussion with our witnesses on how best to maintain U.S. superiority in space and how we can address the many concerns that challenge it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank the ranking member for his comments. We'll now move to opening statements from our witnesses. I would note that your full prepared statements will be made part of the record, but you will each have 4 minutes to make your opening remarks today. Ms. Yaffe, let's begin with you.
Thank you. Chairman Desjardins, Ranking Member Moulton, and distinguished members of the committee, Thank you for inviting me to testify before you on the Department of Defense's National Security Space Programs on behalf of the Office of the Secretary of Defense. I'm honored to appear alongside my colleagues from the Department of the Air Force and the intelligence community. Certainly pleased to be back. The United States seeks a secure, stable, and accessible space domain to allow for its continued use for commercial, scientific, and national security activities. Space and space programs remain central to the Department's core mission of deterring conflict and ensuring our national security. Space systems enable our nuclear forces, our nuclear command, control, and communications, or NC3, strategic warning, missile defense, communications, global force protection, and intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance systems. Space will also be essential to the Golden Dome for America architecture. The President, Secretary, and indeed the entire Joint Force rely on the capabilities provided by our space architecture each day. China and Russia recognize the United States' reliance on space, and they are both developing and fielding counter-space capabilities designed to deny our freedom of action in space and to target U.S. forces on Earth. These developments pose an increasing and unacceptable threat to the United States and our allies and partners, including the commercial space sector. Space superiority is thus crucial to achieving peace through strength in the face of these threats, principally through deterrence and defense in peacetime, but also by enabling the joint force to prevail in all stages of conflict if deterrence fails. Specifically, space superiority is integral to the interim national defense strategic guidance's priorities of defending the homeland and deterring China by denying their ability to confidently hold the joint force at risk. Our ongoing investments seek to ensure the Department can establish space superiority, assure critical space-enabled missions, retain capabilities to deny adversary hostile uses of space, and ensure the joint force continues to have access to and freedom to operate in space. Space also presents unique opportunities to integrate the commercial sector and to increase burden sharing with our allies and partners. The innovative capabilities, scalable production capacity, and rapid technology refresh rates of the U.S. commercial sector are competitive advantages that the Department is leveraging to enhance our national security space programs. There is tremendous potential to build on the success of commercial providers to increase the lethality of the joint force and enhance our ability to defend the homeland and to deter China. As for allies and partners, they help ensure the Department is effectively postured and positioned around the globe to address the growing magnitude and vectors of threats in, from, and to space. The aspiration of other countries to invest in space security has given rise to new opportunities to cooperate across the spectrum of conflict, share the burden of defense, and strengthen deterrence. The Department remains committed to making the necessary investments in our space programs to deter our adversaries and, if deterrence fails, to prevail in conflict. This mission requires sufficient and consistent funding and support. Thank you for your dedication to our mission and to our service members, and for the opportunity to testify to you today alongside my distinguished colleagues. I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Yaffe. Dr. Scalise, you're recognized.
Thank you. Chairman Desjardins, Ranking Member Moulton, and members of the subcommittee, I'm honored to join you, along with my colleagues, Acting Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary Yaffe, Major General Purdy, and Vice Admiral Whitworth, and to represent the people of the National Reconnaissance Office. For 64 years, the NRO has been at the leading edge of innovation, developing space-based capabilities that advance our national security. Today, the NRO is building on that legacy and moving faster than ever before, thanks to the technical expertise and talent of our small and highly effective workforce. Today, we are accelerating build-out, launch, and operations of the world's most capable, resilient, and technologically advanced satellite constellation. We are strengthening the capabilities and security of our ground architecture, and we are deepening our partnerships across government, private industry, academia, and with our allies. Our mission is clear: to achieve the President's objective of peace through strength. This is especially critical as our competitors are seeking to deny our strategic advantage in space. With Congress's continued support, we will ensure America remains the world's leader in space-based intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. Over the past 2 years, the NRO has dramatically transformed our space operations, launching more than 200 satellites to create the largest and most capable government constellation in our nation's history, providing data to our partners sitting with me here today, as well as to our partners in NSA and other organizations. With the support of Congress, the NRO will continue to invest in capabilities that are helping to solve some of the toughest intelligence challenges of our time. Employing advanced technologies makes it harder for our adversaries to hide, giving the U.S. decision advantage. Using different orbits and proliferating our systems allow us to track more objects more reliably. Diversifying systems in space and on the ground increases resilience. Employing AI techniques and advanced data systems allows us to provide more information faster to users, especially intelligence analysts, policymakers, and warfighters, allowing them to make critical decisions with the best information. Developing leading-edge research in areas like photonics, quantum sensing, advanced materials, and AI/ML prepare us for the future. All of these advanced capabilities, as well as those in development, allow us to support current challenges like the crisis in Ukraine and support the interdiction of narcotics trafficking, as well as preparing for the future. The NRO's talented workforce is delivering these capabilities, but we can't do it alone. We are continuing to build partnerships across the government, academia, industry, and with allied nations that allow us to enable us to leverage innovative technologies. Working with intelligence community partners, our world-class constellations and ground architectures will fuse data collections. For example, working with DIA, we accredited tools and capabilities to enable data fusion, improving intelligence outcomes. We have a close and productive relationship with NASA and the U.S. Space Force to support coordinated investment in space. Through an increasing number of commercial partnerships, we're leveraging commercial satellite buses, launch services, and data from electro-optical to radar and RF, as well as other phenomenologies. We're fusing commercial data streams with national data streams and making them more readily available to our customers. In conclusion, the NRO's continued success in maintaining our competitive advantage and keeping America safe depends on our continued ability to innovate our investments in our workforce and our partnerships, and on Congress' continued support for the nation. Our responsible stewardship of taxpayer dollars is best illustrated by our 16th consecutive clean financial statement audit. On behalf of the entire NRO workforce, I appreciate the opportunity to appear for you today. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Doctor. Admiral Whitworth, you're recognized.
Good afternoon, distinguished members of the subcommittee. I'm honored to appear before you with my teammates. The National Geospatial Intelligence Agency's, or NGA, mission is the exploitation and analysis of imagery and geospatial information to describe, assess, and visually depict features and geographically referenced activities on or about the Earth and in space. The geospatial intelligence, or GEOINT for short, we produce provides warfighters, policymakers, intelligence professionals, and first responders the information they require to develop and carry out national security objectives that defend the homeland, secure U.S. interests abroad, and protect Americans serving in harm's way. Space-based systems play a critical role in supporting the U.S. national security strategy and are a primary source for the data NGA gathers to develop and produce GEOINT. Our global competitors also share an appreciation for the space domain and value the advantage that space-based platforms offer to further their own objectives. Indeed, China's and Russia's space activities have become increasingly concerning, as both have developed and fielded counter-space capabilities, including progressively more capable multi-sensor systems designed to hold U.S. space-based systems at risk. NGA's motto, Know the World, Show the Way, from seabed to space, reflects our responsibility to understand and distinguish these developments in a dynamic, changing world, not only in space, but across all domains. We achieve this with a team that is spread across more than 200 sites, including more than 20 countries around the world, embedded at most warfighting headquarters, many government agencies, numerous service intelligence centers, and at every combatant command and intelligence agency. Gathering the data and imagery necessary to characterize the activities and operations of our adversaries from the Earth to space is not a simple task. The key to that effort is NGA's informed collection orchestration process. This process, developed with centuries of collective expertise is how NGA professionals and mission partners choreograph an increasingly complex and capable constellation of space-based GEOINT assets. In the past year, NGA took a giant leap to improve this process, establishing the Joint Mission Management Center, JMMC, with the United States Space Force, joining warfighters and intelligence professionals under NGA's roof to decrease the gap between collection requests and delivery. The JMMC is central to ensuring our warfighters and intelligence professionals receive the imagery and analysis they need and deserve. The expanding opportunities for space-based GEOINT collection, including national technical means and commercial sources, are generating a data deluge that will, if we harness it, allow us to support the demands and needs of warfighters in the future. Through programs like NGA Maven, we are collaborating with warfighting headquarters around the world to continue providing the right GEOINT data when and where it is needed. Finally, I would like to highlight NGA's responsibility for guaranteeing the accuracy of GPS and maintaining the World Geodetic System 1984, or WGS 84, at reference frame, the backbone for all geolocation. These efforts are central to improving GPS geolocation accuracy for warfighters and government civil agencies alike, guaranteeing assured precision, navigation, timing, and targeting. In closing, NGA relies greatly upon data obtained from space. As our nation sharpens its focus in the domain, we embrace our partners at U.S. Space Force, U.S. Space Com, and NRO, ensuring that we maximize the potential of GEOINT to help understand adversary space and counter space threats. Thank you, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Admiral. General Purdy, you're recognized.
Chairman Desjardins, Ranking Member Moulton, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for inviting me to testify today. As military deputy, I first want to thank you for the NDA authority to serve as the acting SAE. It's allowed me to give direction, sign off acquisition plans, and actually make substantive change, and I really do thank you for that. I tell our acquisition community that it's our job to deliver integrated capability for the warfighter, and we've had multiple successes over this past several months. Back in August, we launched 2 EPSR payloads that ride-shared on Norway satellites. These provided comm in the northern polar region, and this international partnership allowed the U.S. government to save $900 million. Over the year, our newer OTTI, our Test and Training SPO organization, has been able to deliver multiple trainers and multiple training injects into our war games to satisfy operational desires. In January, the Unified Data Library provided critical support to the presidential inauguration, supporting counter small UAS operations ingesting over 1.4 million data tracks. In April, we had a big month. We launched our first NSSL Phase 3 mission. It was for the NRO and was only 6 months after the award. Later in April, Space Force operationally accepted the weather system follow-on. It helped us close 6 of 12 gaps. And then finally, we operationally accepted the S2E2 system, which is a mobile ground system that supports OPIR. But in addition to delivering capability, it's also our job to figure out ways to go faster. Over the last 2 years, the Space Force has increased our OTAs by 470% and increased our software pathways by 350%. An example from last year, the RGPS system, we went from RFP to award in 71 days, mimicking the Space Development Agency's type of timelines. And speaking of SDA, they continue to press forward with their speedy acquisition contract timelines, as well as their launches coming up this summer. Additionally, we're big fans and work with SpaceWorks quite frequently on the StratFIs and TACFIs and SBIRs. Over 1,000 contracts have been awarded through that mechanism, and excitingly, we've been able to leverage and almost $1 billion of venture capital money, external funds, have been able to be collaboratively used for Space Force missions. In addition to other collaboration with the Space Force, we're using the SAE authorities in addition to the Space Force requirements authorities and going after program requirements, figuring out ways that we can dial down requirements and get after the commercial, the speed of commercial delivery. Our next plan is to go after our operational acceptance and test timelines as well. Most importantly, on the acquisition workforce, it was mentioned here a few times, we're working workforce career plans for both the program managers and the engineers. and we're thinking through how we can get after longer PM timelines, both early in their career to get after the reps and sets needed to understand our business, and then later in their career when they're actually running as a program manager. And finally, my deepest thanks to the entire acquisition, engineering, financial, contracting, and legal communities. These communities work extremely long hours under stressful situations. They're constantly dealing with new companies and new ways of business, and they do tremendous. And so my deep thanks to all their work. And finally, I look forward to all your questions. Thank you very much.
And thank you all for your opening remarks. We'll now turn to member questions. I'll start by recognizing myself for 5 minutes. General Purdy, you touched on some of this in your opening remarks, but I mentioned your recent announcement about the GSAP acquisition plan. Can you talk a little bit about how you approached that and specifically how you worked with the requirements community?
Yes, sir. That's actually a pretty exciting accomplishment that we've been able to do. So that started from last year's efforts on the Resilient GPS program, where we explored the commercial capability that was there, and we found that bus prices, satellite bus prices, were less expensive at MEO than we thought, and we found that there was more capability for payloads than we thought. So then last year we did an RFI, a request for information out to industry, on the GSAP program, and we got quite a wide variety of responses. We weren't able to proceed due to classification issues, so then I worked with U.S. Spacecom and the Space Force requirement side and the leadership to understand what their trade-offs might be. They expressed a willingness to trade off requirements, so then I went back to the SPO, and the SPO listed out all of the different current activities and the speed that they could do with their current system, and then what the commercial side could do, and if we turned off certain requirements, how much faster they could go. That revealed interesting data to include they could shave off about 1/3 of the time and over half the cost. So we packaged that up, worked with the Space Force requirements community. They agreed to that, signed off on that requirements drop. And then we were able to get out to the system program office. So we're off working now, that program office, to go start off a more commercial line. And when I say commercial in this particular aspect, just to clarify, this is accomplishing the same GSAP mission. Our operators will fly the GSAP system using the same ground systems and data they do now, but these would be using faster commercial build times, cheaper build times, and cheaper, less expensive parts in order to bring that together in a faster sense.
Mm-hmm. On the Resilient GPS, what requirement does it fill for the service? And I think you touched on it, but how has that acquisition process been different?
Sure. So on our GPS, the Resilient GPS, so the requirement we're going after there is something that our SWAC analytical arm and the Space Force and the Defense Science Board both flagged, and that's a resiliency need for the GPS enterprise. It is one of our most proliferated in the current sense, but yet it will soon be one of our least proliferated. And it's vulnerable given the fact that the GPS constellation is relatively small in number, is reachable by direct ascent attack ASATs, and supports such an important military and commercial mission. And so the initial thinking was we used NDA-granted Quick Start Authority to start up the RGPS program, and we're looking to add more resiliency and more numbers. And that's the basic intent. The acquisition plan was essentially we went out to industry. We actually didn't think that we were going to get much, to be honest with you. And it was a surprise to us and a major learning portion for us, a learning event last year. The satellite prices they were low in LEO already, but they were lowering in MEO. And so that convinced us that we should proceed with it. The results have actually been more surprising and encouraging than we thought. The buses actually bring a higher power level than our current program of record does, which allows us to punch through jamming in a better sense. And so we can achieve better results, we think, over time going after these commercial buses. So that's actually caused me to think for a mainline GPS system, we're actually looking at that for alternative ways to get after that, like our GPS.
Okay. Dr. Scalise, I got about a minute here, but can you talk a little bit about the role that the Space Force Guardians play in the work of the NRO, and what do you see as the value both the NRO and Space Force get out of that arrangement?
Certainly, yeah, they play a very vital role in it. As you know, about 1/3 of our workforce is military, and the largest component of that military force are the Guardians, and they serve roles for, principally in engineering and acquisition, developing some of our most important systems, as you're well aware. particularly as I mentioned, the roughly 200 satellites we've launched over the last couple of years. They were largely done with Guardians because we knew where the ultimate utilization of them is. At the same time, they also bring the wealth of knowledge of what the Space Force needs so that we can go off and work together. And I believe that working together, we help grow them and show them our acquisition philosophy, and they take that back to the Space Force as well. And we also gain from them their learning from Space Force. So they're a very vital part of our organization.
Thank you. My time has expired. I now recognize the ranking member for his questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We've had a lot of discussions on this committee about how space is becoming not just strategically important, but tactically important to the warfighter. Vice Admiral Whitworth, excuse me, in your opening statement, you emphasized the global presence of NGA personnel embedded with warfighters. How specifically are those personnel training or educating warfighters to better leverage commercial GEOINT capabilities?
Thank you, sir, for the question. So at every combatant command, JTF, Joint Task Force, every service intel center, every service, we're going to have what we call an NGA support team that makes the essence of your question their calling, how to ensure that they get as much GEOINT at a place where it can provide decision advantage for that commander. Your specific question is so important when you think about the 4 parts of GEOINT. We've got national technical means, we've got the proliferated architecture of DoD, we've got international contributions, and then there's commercial. Commercial is potentially so agile that it can fill gaps that we may not otherwise have. It's also important to the mission in being able to express maybe to partners in a very immediate way, in an unclassified way, the meaning of what's happening in the world without giving up something that's more exquisite in national technical means.
Should Congress consider expanding tactical surveillance, reconnaissance, and tracking authorities to allow DoD elements to procure commercial data directly, especially raw imagery, to better meet these time-sensitive operational requirements?
It's a valid point, sir, and I would just offer we do have a responsibility, at least at NGA, and I'm sure that, and this is consistent with what I've received from oversight, to ensure that the taxpayer only pays once. So as we establish that denominator, somebody has to actually know what's coming from NTM, what's coming from the proliferated architecture, and then what is left that we still haven't bought, and to ensure we don't buy it twice. So I would just caution that we not create a situation where everyone's buying the same
I understand the concern, but it's 2025. This should be pretty easy to figure out with technology.
That's right, sir.
We just need to do it.
Yes, sir. And with the advent of a system that we call Slim Jims, all of the combatant commands actually can use Slim Jims to see that denominator. That's right.
General Purdy, Dr. Scalise, do you have any comments on this question?
It's on the Space Force's side to figure out sort of that relationship and the ops background, and so I'm going to focus more on the acquisition side. I know on our TAC SRT piece, we've got relationships where we can go take quick return tasks, we can feed the data with NGA, and there's pending MOUs that are heading in that direction. And I'll defer to Dr. Scalise.
Yeah, and we work closely, obviously, with NGA as well as the Space Force to make sure data is available. But I would also add that we also work with NSA because we also are collecting RF data as well. So commercial plays a vital role, and we believe we're supporting all the organizations that need it.
General Purdy, in your opening remarks, you state the Space Force's decision to repurpose acquisition lieutenant billets to support the officer training course and operational tours combined with looming reductions in the civilian workforce, we've already seen 14%, and advisory and assistance contractor reductions, they all increase the risk to program execution. Can you provide any examples of where you are taking risk due to reduced personnel?
So I don't have specific examples and effects for you, I guess I'd say. It's more the risks that have been sort of materialized. So a combination of factors. So the OTC creation, obviously we've moved out lieutenants and we've put them into OTC. By the way, as an acquisition side, we call that OpEx for everybody, and generally speaking, we support that operational experience. That has created a gap Our plan was to fill that with civilian hires. That has obviously run into a bit of a problem in addition to, as we take PMs and FMs and PK reductions. And so we haven't had a chance to fully absorb and understand the numbers yet. You gave a number in your opening talk. I haven't actually received all those yet from the different organizations. I know anecdotally, was speaking with SDA, was speaking with AFWorks and SpaceWorks, was speaking with SSC. There's, I would say, trouble brewing. We're worried about the numbers. We're worried that we can execute our program offices. The program offices always vary a little bit based on their intensity and size, so you can dial a little bit, but there is a limit to it. And
Well,
so,
there's obviously bipartisan concern in the committee
Yes,
as
sir.
well, so thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The chair recognizes the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Wilson, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Dr. Chairman Desjardins, for your leadership. And indeed, this is bipartisan as we work with Congressman Moulton and everyone here. And we are so grateful, again, for each of you being here today. And it's particularly important because, sadly, the world is in a conflict we did not choose between dictators with rule of gun invading democracies with rule of law. It began on February 24, 2022, with war criminal Putin invading Ukraine, and then it proceeded with mass murder on October 7, 2023, when the Iranian puppets invaded Israel with the catastrophic consequences there. War criminal Putin and the Chinese Communist Party continue to expand and modernize their space capabilities, with war criminal Putin acknowledging that other countries' commercial infrastructure and outer space used for military purposes can and will become a legitimate target. The U.S. must maintain an ability to be ahead of our adversaries in space to make sure that we have peace through strength. With that in mind, Secretary Yaffe, you have been correctly explaining the rapid rise of the adversary counter space capabilities, especially for war criminal Putin and the Chinese Communist Party. As you mentioned in your statement, quote, the department remains concerned that Russia is developing a new satellite meant to carry a nuclear weapon as an anti-satellite capability, end of quote. With these remarks, it's inherently destabilizing. What is the DoD assessment of the CCP and war criminal Putin's ability to have intent of such capabilities?
Thank you, sir. I'm sorry, when you said intent of such capabilities, you raised the Russian one. Are you asking about the breadth of counter space capabilities?
Yes, yes.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the question. I mean, our concern is that Russia and China are both pursuing a breadth of capabilities intended to hold our space assets at risk, given that they know the advantages that we derive from those assets. They want to deny our ability to access those services, probably through both reversible and irreversible means. We know that we need to protect these assets, protect both our critical space-based assets and the joint force against space-enabled threats from their space assets.
And what is the status of our ability to counteract that?
I mean, sir, it depends certainly on the threats that we're facing, but from our perspective, we need to be arrayed against the breadth of threats that we face from both of them. Certainly, we do continue to spend a lot of time being concerned about the one Russian space system, where they seem intent on putting a nuclear weapon in space. But we also need to be prepared for ground-to-space threats, on-orbit threats, et cetera. I mean, what we've said, and we continue to say, is we need to have a breadth of assets in all domains to protect our space-based assets and to protect our personnel. These may include both reversible and non-reversible, kinetic, non-kinetic options. But it is important that we are able to give the Secretary of Defense and the President options if required and if we face these threats in action from our adversaries.
Well, thank you so much for your insight. And Vice Admiral Whitworth, the capabilities of your agency or department to provide vital edge against our adversaries on ground and space domain. We are fortunate that our country is full of innovative companies in the private sector who are willing to work with the government to provide the capabilities for national security. How do you coordinate your efforts to acquire commercial space capabilities or license commercial data from other organizations within DoD and the intelligence community?
Thank you, sir, for the question. And this goes to our emphasis on commercially available, especially for us, per policy analytics, where we certainly look for the best analytics we can get for GEOINT. And we have many things available to us. Commercial solutions offerings, they're very speedy. Bailment agreements are a way that we can try it on for size, see if it works for both sides. IDIQs, of course, is the tradition. We're always looking for the best and brightest, and this is evidenced by Luno A and B, which is that's an RFP of upwards of $500 million, and we've got now task orders for that in the maritime domain.
Well, that's really encouraging. And again, with the commercial capabilities, what is it? Are they ahead of government capabilities, or how do you assess their capability?
I think the importance here is we're insatiable in coverage, and so I don't think I'm in a position to say one's better than the other, but coverage is the name of the game here, and so we're a bit insatiable. I've said it in the past. We kind of want it all.
Thank you very much, and I yield back. Thank you.
Thank the gentleman. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Whitesides, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me start by recognizing my friend, Dr. Chris Scalise. We've known each other for over 15 years, and his service to the country across a wide range of government agencies is exemplary, and, thank you for your service, Chris. To jump into it, General Purdy, I just wanted to add my voice to concerns that we provide a promising career advancement pathway for our space acquisitions workforce. I know you are deep in the midst of that, but I think what you're hearing from all of us on the Armed Services Committee is that is clearly something that we're concerned about, and just wanted to add my voice to that. To Admiral Whitworth and Dr. Scalise, in terms of the commercial remote sensing budgets, we have heard reports that the FY26 budget request will include cuts to NRO and Space Force commercial remote sensing funding. This is concerning, obviously, partly because there's so much going on in space and there's such a great demand for this data. It also seems to go against stated administration priorities, and we also want to make sure that we're maintaining a sort of a wide base of suppliers. Can either of you sort of speak to the reality of that? We see things in the news. Is it real, and how are you working to free up legacy requirements and budget to kind of keep pushing the ball forward on these things to enable traditional systems to focus more heavily on the things that only the U.S. government can do?
You said it right. We want to focus the government effort on only those things that we can do. So we very much value the commercial capabilities and intend to keep on using those. It's largely based on demand, of course, but commercial is absolutely critical to what we're doing. And I would add, it's not just the commercial imagery; it's also commercial RF and also newer phenomenologies as we're working with that industry to go off and help advance those. But even further, it's helped enable our proliferated architecture. As General Purdy mentioned earlier, we're finding that commercial buses are not only available, but they're also capable of doing a lot of what our missions require, and they're available at a much lower cost than going off and developing a brand new bus. And you will see those in our proliferated architecture that we're deploying today, and you will also see it as we're going forward and we're advancing the same thing in our SIGINT architectures.
Thank you. Admiral Whitworth, would you like to add anything to that?
At this time, I don't think so, because it's not our purview to actually enter a contract on pixels for commercial. So I would defer to Chris on that one.
Okay, sounds good. Major General Purdy, with all the sort of uncertainty coming out of SDA over the last several months, can you give us a status update on their efforts to provide missile warning, missile tracking capabilities as part of the broader Space Force missile warning, missile track architecture?
Sure. SDA has continued to forge ahead with their Tranche 1 activity. They continue to finalize testing on their Tranche 0, which was a test activity, so that's continued to work through their testing of the COM and their missile warning test. On the Tranche 1, that's coming in finally. They should start their launches this summer, toward the tail end of this summer, and they'll launch about one mission or a set of missions a month, so about one a month. Missile warning kicks in I think a little bit later this fall, and so they'll finish that out through the beginning of next year. Once those are in orbit, the plan is actually pretty nice. So they're the LEO missile warning architecture. There's another office doing the MEO architecture, and then there are other offices existing and future that are doing architecture out in GEO. All that data is flowing into the same systems. There are multiple pathways for all the OPIR systems, and the LEO data from SDA is flowing into those same exact systems.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Crank, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate our witnesses being here. Thank you all for your service to our country. If you've heard me speak for any length of time at this subcommittee before, you know I'm already excited about the potential for Golden Dome to protect the homeland and deter our adversaries. And while I'm sure we're going to spend several years here on this committee debating which fancy and expensive systems to buy, Congress and DOD need to ensure that we're doing it in a smart way. Just like how you need to buy a propane tank to go with your gas grill, we need to ensure we aren't just funding systems, but also the support infrastructure needed for success. General Purdy, I want to focus on two exciting programs essential to homeland defense: orbital warfare spacecraft and space-based interceptors. Can you tell me how, in addition to procuring these critical weapon systems, the Space Force is also thinking about all the other things that are needed to successfully field and employ these items? I'm thinking of the personnel, the training, the testing capabilities, and especially the command and control architectures. The satellite control network is rapidly aging and already near max capacity for day-to-day operations, and the new phased array systems are still in development. How's the deployment of these new phased array systems going, and how are you continuing to add requirements for additional capacity in the satellite control network as the systems that will use it continue to proliferate? General Purdy.
Sir, thank you for the question. That is a particular strong focus of basically what we'd call end-to-end capability. Too long in the past, we would deliver one, say, a satellite or whatnot, and we would not be considering the whole rest of the architecture. So we have kind of established a policy of fully mission capable, full end-to-end. So there's multiple ways that we're getting after that activity. So for one, we actually have a PEO stood up to get after test and training architecture, so I'll set that one aside. I have a whole integration team that reports to me as the SAE. Their job is to get after the end-to-end integration pieces, and specifically to be tracking all the programs and making sure that we have the capacity that we're building in for tests and training architecture, SCN architecture, et cetera. So I've got that process going. Specifically on SCN, because you mentioned that one a few times, we have our existing SCN architecture, as you mentioned. The next generation is the SCAR ESA radar system that we're developing that allow us to hit multiple contacts at the same time. That's going reasonably well. It is a complicated build, and so it's frankly too slow for my taste and too slow for the need, but it's going reasonably well. And so they are aiming for the first system. There's a demo this year, and then there's I think it's the next year plus is when that first one's coming out. As a backup plan, what we've got going on is what's called JAM, the Joint Antenna Marketplace. This one's pretty exciting because this is going to do two things for us. It's going after full-up commercial. There's a lot of commercial capacity out there to do SCN activity. We've practiced that with SDA. We've practiced that with Sparco. Both of them have used commercial, cloud-based SCN, and actually even worldwide as well. And so JAM is going to get after. That's going to open up hundreds of additional capacity and ability to go get hundreds of additional targets. In addition, that's going to do what's called orchestration to help us figure out machine to machine which systems we're going to go. Are we going to use existing SCN? Are we going to use SCAR? Or are we going to use this JAM? So all of those elements are pieces of the architecture that we're putting together slowly, and I'm tying it together and tracking it at my level with our integration function. Think of it as like a space systems chief engineer.
Okay. You talked about, and I don't have enough time here, but I'm going to throw this out there, and maybe if we get a second round, we'll come back to it. But you talked about the unified data library. Of course, a cloud-based data repository designed to consolidate commercial and U.S. government space situational awareness data. It's intended to be the single source for accessing and managing all data in support of Space Force operational systems. To what extent is Space Force using it, and which Space Force operational systems are connected to it?
Yeah, many, if not all. So multiple deltas at Space Operations Center are using it for their positional tracking in addition to, say, interference kind of activity. The NSDC, which is the ops floor doing the space war, is tracking it with their C2 system. U.S. Spacecom at the command and commander uses it for their official common operating picture. JCO is the main ops hub that's plugging in all the combatant commanders, is also using it and tracking it. And we actually track that worldwide on worldwide ops centers.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Bell, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Ranking Member. Dr. Scalise, I want to echo the sentiments of my colleagues and thank you for your service, as well as Admiral Whitworth, General Purdy. Also, Ms. Yaffe, your depth of knowledge in space policy and strategy is impressive and appreciated and very much needed at this time. I am proud to represent St. Louis, home to the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency's West Campus, or NGA St. Louis, a cornerstone of our nation's defense and a testament to St. Louis's growing sector and leadership in geospatial intelligence. St. Louis is rapidly solidifying its position as America's Center for Geospatial Intelligence and hub of innovation. With the soon-to-be open brand new state-of-the-art NGA West or NGA St. Louis facility, my district is not only supporting the mission of NGA, but it is becoming indispensable to it. This investment reinforces the agency's capabilities and anchors St. Louis as a crucial component for our country's national security. NGA's presence in St. Louis isn't just a point of pride, it's a clear recognition of our region's critical contributions to intelligence, innovation, and homeland defense and security. St. Louis is not just participating in our national security efforts, we're helping lead them. With that, Admiral Whitworth and Ms. Yaffe, I'd like you to chime in as well, if you don't mind. Can you provide an update on the progress and status of the new facility and your vision for the local academic and community partnerships that might be fostered and developed through this new opportunity?
Thank you, Mr. Bell. It's good to see you again. You got to see the real NGA when you participated in our 845 Ops and Intel update. That wasn't a stunt. That was the real NGA. And so this is a very, very important question. We're very pleased to report that we are on glide slope for an opening on the 26th of September. We are in the fine-tuning right now of that facility on the northern portion of St. Louis. That involves mainly just IT, and we know where everyone's going to sit. We have been giving tours to our workforce. They're getting excited. It is ready to go. On your question vis-a-vis the ecosystem, also extremely important. That is vibrant right now. One of the best examples of the combination of business, academia, civil government, federal government, intelligence, all banding together to ensure that this is a success. I think it will be a poll star for other communities as far as the relationship, especially between local business, local government, federal government, and academia with something like the Taylor Geospatial Institute, which is at full tilt.
Thank you. I'm not sure if I can add much to the NGA facility, but I would just say that we have to continue to foster the space expertise and ecosystem within the government and with the industrial base because the sector is only growing and we're going to need to leverage all the talent out there. Thank you.
Thank you. A few weeks ago, General Guillot testified before this committee that NGA is an extremely important partner in NORTHCOM and NORAD day-to-day operations, and that every advanced mission we do includes NGA capabilities. As the nation develops the Golden Dome for America, and as adversaries continue to modernize and enhance their capabilities, What is NGA's role in this mission of defending the homeland against missile threats? And how do you see geospatial intelligence contributing to Golden Dome efforts?
Thank you very much for this question. It is a multidimensional answer. I'll give it very quickly. I would offer that our advancements in target development, the target development section of AI-enabled mission command, some of the things that we've been able to foster through NGA Maven/Maven Smart System, I think may be applicable here. And then, of course, we have expertise and a really important bridging between Title 10 and Title 50 on some of the sensors that detect heat.
And then quickly in your statement for the record, you mentioned that NGA leads a community-wide process to coordinate commercial geospatial intelligence purchases across the government, maximizing the ability to share commercial imagery and analytics and preventing redundant acquisitions. Admiral, how does NGA work with consumers of commercial imagery and analytics, including the combatant commands as well as NRO and Space Force?
Yes, sir.
In 3 seconds.
Yeah, if you would just submit that for the record. We're going to be running up against votes, so we got one more round of questions, then we're going to move to the classified
Thanks, Mr.
setting so we can get you out of here before we go vote. So Chair now recognizes Mr. Hamada from Arizona for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Space is the next frontier of warfare, and it's easy to overlook because we can't see it. But back home in Arizona, in Flagstaff, there's a small naval observatory that plays a huge role. Now, that little station tells us exactly where we are in the galaxy. It aids in setting the official time for the entire Department of Defense and the country. GPS, internet, communications, every part of our daily life depends on commercial and military space assets. Our enemies know this, and that's why China and Russia say that our satellites are fair game. They are preparing to knock us back decades without ever hitting American soil or our service members. Now, that's why this mission of our Space Force is so crucial. We have no choice but to build America's technical edge, resilience, deterrence, and counterstrike abilities in the space domain. Now, my first question is for Ms. Yaffe. I'm going to piggyback off what Congressman Wilson was talking about with the Russia's latest space race and what we talked about last time in the bigger committee last week. What equivalent wild card option do we have that keeps the Russians and Chinese up at night in terms of offensive capabilities? I know we focus a lot on defensive.
Thank you, sir, for the question. I mean, certainly we are not looking for an equivalent capability to what Russia might be pursuing. It'd be a violation of the Outer Space Treaty and would be devastating to low Earth orbit and to our interests. With that said, we are trying to be absolutely clear to Russia and China and anyone else that wishes to do us harm that we have an imperative to protect our freedom of access to space and our freedom to operate in space. And we are going to need a breadth of capabilities to do that. You know, we are trying to normalize space as an operational domain, which normally means we largely focus on doing things more normally within the department, having war games that consider space, ensure military plans do, et cetera. But there are some differences with the space domain, so we may not talk about our capabilities in the same way. We think there are other ways to message to our adversaries what we intend to achieve, but we want to be absolutely critical. We are going to protect and defend our critical space-based assets and our joint force from space-enabled threats with a breadth of capabilities and to ensure the President and Secretary of Defense have options.
Very good. I know you mentioned earlier in your testimony about burden sharing with our allies as well. How do our allies see this space race? Do they see the same threat as we do?
Thank you, sir. We think that cooperation with allies and partners remains essential, and certainly space offers advantages for burden sharing. We have a few ways to go about it. Part of it is ensuring that we do see the threat in the same way. We've been pursuing for a number of years something that's called the Combined Space Operations Initiative, or CSPO. It's grown recently from 7 to 10 countries of our most capable spacefaring partners. Part of that is ensuring that we see the threats in the same way. Part of it is thinking about how we approach the domain to operate most effectively and to our advantage. We explore different operational concepts. We explore appropriate behaviors because unlike in every other domain, we don't have norms of behavior. We also engage bilaterally with some of our most capable spacefaring partners because we do believe there are different ways that they can pick up the burden to ensure that we can all approach the domain and protect our freedom to access and operate in the domain.
Are we looking at expanding it beyond the 10 partners already?
It's certainly under consideration. It's not calendar-based, it's conditions-based. We want to expand when there are partners that can bring something to the table, and that's what we did most recently with Japan, Italy, and Norway. If we assess that there are other partners that can similarly contribute to both the threat picture and operational concepts and capabilities and norms, I think that there would be consideration among those 10 partners to expand.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Yaffe.
Thank you.
My next question is to General Purdy. It seems like there's been a lot of progress with the acquisition reform, especially with the 6 months NRO contract they were mentioning earlier. I know acquisition reform is going to be a huge focus of this year's defense bill, and we can't keep pace with China if we don't have the space industrial base. But if you had the power to make a single change to our space acquisitions, what would that be?
So there are a host of, in the PBE Commission and other commissions that have listed out a whole host of activities. If I had to pick one, I think flexibility of funds, particularly in CR environments. We really find ourselves up in a barrel when we can't actually get our funds, until later in the year. And so ability to do BTR, ATO thresholds at a higher level, ability to do quick starts, ability to get moving in that progress while we're waiting for the big bill, I think is probably one of the most #1 things I would poke at.
Yeah, flexibility seems to be a unifying issue.
Yes.
Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. That concludes the open portion of the hearing. We'll now move to the closed setting.